Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, a Pittsburgh Steelers podcast made by fans like you, for fans like you. Now, here's your host, Joe Kuzma.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. I wanted to get right into it today. The big news, the 2016 NFL schedule is released, and we find out that the Steelers have 4 primetime games, 3 of them on holidays. So I'm going to go through all of those one by one here, about as quick as possible, actually, because, it's still April, and, no matter what this schedule looks like on paper, it's going to change not only when the season starts, but as the season progresses and, injuries and things of that nature take their toll on teams. I kind of wanted to toot my own horn, though. Right before the schedule came out, the day before I had tweeted, it just seems like the Steelers are always playing a Sunday night football game or a Thursday night football game against the Bengals and Ravens. And if they're not doing that just once, they're doing it twice during the season. So what actually ended up happening is the Steelers will play at Cincinnati for Sunday night football. They're going to play the Ravens at a 4:30 game, but that is on Christmas Day. That's one of those holidays, which is also a Sunday, by the way. And then just to mention, only 2 games are playing on Christmas. So 4 teams, obviously, because you need 2 for each game. So most of the Christmas slate, since Christmas falls on a Sunday, most of the games that usually are played on that Sunday have been pushed ahead one day to Saturday. So Steelers are one of those 4 teams that are featured in, quote, a primetime Christmas schedule, since it is an NFL Sunday. And then the final prediction that I hit the nail on the head, and it really doesn't take much of a crystal ball. The Pittsburgh Steelers have been playing against the Cleveland Browns for the final week of the NFL season for, I do believe now, it's 4 out of the last 5 years, or even maybe 5 out of the last 6. So drilling down through this schedule, we're going to take a look. The Steelers are going to start off right out the gate in a primetime game at the Washington Redskins. And I don't necessarily have so much of a problem with this schedule, with this as the opening part of the schedule. I really loved when they played on the Thursday at New England, despite it being at New England. That meant the Steelers got an extended break until their home opener in week 2. The following Sunday. Quite the contrary this year, the Steelers are going to be playing a Monday night game, which means they have a short week to prepare for their week 2 home opener against the Cincinnati Bengals, of which those Cincinnati Bengals are probably going to cry foul because they aren't going to have Vontaze Burfict available for that game. But they also, I would rather have the extra day of rest than maybe missing one player, because this is a team sport. You could always make up for that player. And, of course, the Bengals signing linebacker Carlos Dansby to hopefully fill that gap while Burfict serves his 3-game suspension. So those are the first 2 weeks right out the gate. The Pittsburgh Steelers open at home in week 2, an early afternoon game against the Cincinnati Bengals, a much anticipated rematch from last year's playoff games, and actually all the regular season games were just knockout, drag out. This is becoming a very ugly type rivalry game. So we're going to see how that works when one of the main instigators is out. I do believe that was the NFL's main purpose for scheduling that game early during Burfict's suspension. To be completely honest, that's why they put it in Pittsburgh too, because how us Yinzers would treat Vontaze Burfict. We'd give him a nice Pittsburgh welcome, wouldn't we, fans? Heading over into week 3, the Steelers then bounce back over across the state to the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles are under the leadership of a new head coach with Doug Peterson, and just about everything there has been gutted. Not only was Chip Kelly gutting it, but then Chip Kelly getting shown the door. That team is just, I really don't know what the Eagles are going to look like this early into the season, or this early into the league year. So that's kind of a wait and see. The Steelers get to hopefully return the favor to the Kansas City Chiefs when they lost in Kansas City at Arrowhead Stadium last year after Big Ben was injured, and then Michael Vick was injured, and Landry Jones had to carry that team on his back, and it was just an ugly performance. That will be a Sunday night football game, the second primetime game for the Steelers as they host the Kansas City Chiefs. The last time they hosted Kansas City at Heinz Field for a primetime game, it went into overtime where it ended with a Lawrence Timmons interception. The Steelers now then again go bounce back into week 5, where they have another home game. So they string 2 back-to-back home games, and they will face the New York Jets, who are probably looking for some type of measure of revenge for getting boosted out of the playoffs last year, and the Steelers into the playoffs on tiebreaker. The Steelers will then take their 2-game homestand and travel in Week 6 to the Miami Dolphins, yet another team that's in constant disarray and change. They also have a new head coach, and now I'm trying to think. I know he was with the Broncos the previous season, the former offensive coordinator for the Broncos, who then went to the Bears last year as an offensive coordinator. Now the head coach of Miami Dolphins, Adam Gase. That will be an early afternoon game in Miami. From Week 6 to Week 7, the Steelers now host the New England Patriots. So the Steelers going 3 games in a row with their AFC East slate in October, with first the Jets at home, then Miami, and then they will be hosting the New England Patriots for what's sure to be one of the CBS doubleheader games with a 4:25 start. Week 8, after New England, the Steelers will have a bye before traveling in Week 9 to the Baltimore Ravens. This one is not a primetime game. It'll be an early afternoon. Week 10, the Pittsburgh Steelers are hosting the Dallas Cowboys, looks like another one of those CBS doubleheader deals with a 4:25 start. They host the Cowboys and then will travel short little drive up the road to Cleveland to face the Cleveland Browns Week 11 for an early afternoon game. Then come back around on a short week for their Thursday night football game, which will actually be on Thanksgiving night in Indianapolis against the Colts. And just to kind of rewind against those last 4 teams that are all playing in November, a lot of people are going to look on paper, look at records. You can't really take face value for how bad the Baltimore Ravens, for example, were last year, or even Dallas Cowboys with all of their injuries. Ravens, of course, losing their starting running back, Justin Forsett, partway through the season. Joe Flacco also going down. Even with all of the injuries, they never got their first-round draft pick on the field, much like we didn't get our second-round draft pick on the field. So their wide receiver, Brashard Perriman, he's looking to get some action this year too. Some of their free agent signings. So you can never look, as they say, don't look a gift horse in the mouth, of course, because even with all of those injuries, the Ravens swept the Steelers last year. And, of course, we had our own injuries too, losing in overtime when Michael Vick was the quarterback. So you just can't look on paper and say, oh, this is an easy schedule, for example. Same thing with the Dallas Cowboys. They lose Tony Romo. They lose like 7 in a row. They get Tony Romo back, and then he gets hurt in the very same game that he's back on Thanksgiving night. And then the Cowboys just go into a downward spiral too. So they're looking to rebound and be healthy with some of the players that they lost. Cleveland Browns, I mean, let's face it, once again, a new coach, new quarterback with RG3, Robert Griffin III, signing, former second overall draft choice by the Washington Redskins several years ago. So Cleveland Browns, once again, just like the Miami Dolphins, constant state of change. Indianapolis Colts, another team that had to deal with a lot of injuries last year, particularly to their main guy, their quarterback, Andrew Luck. So you're looking at 4 teams there in the span of November after the bye week that could all be rebuilding, or they may even have it figured out now that they're halfway through the season. So that'll be interesting to see. So we go from Thanksgiving night in that Thursday night game in Indianapolis to Week 13, December 4th, against the New York Giants, another 4:25 kickoff at Heinz Field. The Giants are another team that they just a worse secondary, believe it or not, than the Steelers last season. They are another team who spent a lot of money in free agency to shore up that defense and try to improve. We're going to see how they're going to do in the draft. They're always a franchise. I kind of say that they remind me of the Steelers, much in the same way that they don't change coaches often, but they do have a new head coach this year. But he was the offensive coordinator last year, so they're once again kind of riding that wave of consistency and trying to rebuild and reload. So Giants game, that'll be one to look at. It'll be competitive, at least right now. That's the way I feel. Week 14, we go from Heinz Field and we travel another short trip this time in the opposite direction up to Buffalo, which is going to be away home game number 2 if you count Cleveland. There'll be a lot of Pittsburgh fans in Cleveland, and there might be even more in Buffalo just based on the location and how many fans are in that upper area of Pennsylvania, up around Erie, which is a very short trip over to Orchard Park. So that one's going to be fun. The Bills helped the Steelers get into the playoffs, of course, last season by beating the Jets. That's the last of the AFC East opponents, and it's going to be interesting to see how many times that's brought up when we get over into December. And that's the other important thing, is that game's in December. Hopefully we're not buried in snow by then. It'll probably be a cold one regardless. 2 road games here as we go from Buffalo and then another road trip over to Cincinnati. And you'll notice, and I'm going to cover this right at the end, almost all of these games are road trips. So once again, another rematch with the Cincinnati Bengals. This one will be in Cincinnati in their, quote, jungle for Sunday Night Football. And then the Steelers will wrap up the final 2 weeks of the season playing both games at home. The first one in Week 16 is actually on Christmas afternoon, a 4:30 start on NFL Network against the Baltimore Ravens. And then the final week on New Year's Day, the third holiday game at home against the Cleveland Browns. And so the Steelers have 4 primetime games. They have 3 games on holidays. But the most important part is I think every single one of these games is a bus trip. Or at least be a bus trip if you're a fan, with the exception of the Miami Dolphins. Miami Dolphins, a short plane ride. The Steelers do not travel west of the Mississippi this year for a single regular season game. Every single one of their games, you go down the schedule: Washington, Cincinnati, Philadelphia, Kansas City's at home, New York's at home, Miami's on the road, okay? Miami, Baltimore, Cleveland, Indianapolis on the road, another short trip. That might be the longest trip if they were to actually drive, if we're talking about it that way. And then the Buffalo Bills, of course, that's a short trip, Cincinnati, that they're used to. So very advantageous schedule for the Steelers. They have to deal with some of the short weeks with Monday night and Thursday night football, just like any other team. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how this schedule plays out. Of course, it's way too early to say, hey, you know what, I expect 12 wins, I expect 13 wins. I don't ever expect anything less than 16-0 in a Super Bowl. So asking me that question is a futile effort, and it's just not something that I'm prepared to answer at this time. But I tell you what, I appreciate all you guys for listening. We got the schedule now. We're geeked up, amped up, and heading into the draft. If you haven't had a chance yet, check out the 2016 draft preview on our website. It's a free draft guide that's an ebook you could download and actually view it on your iPad or on any computer or electronic device, including your smartphone. Go over and sign up for it. We've added some more new information to it. We have all 27 of the current draft visitors. Of the total 30 that the Steelers will have, they have 3 more that they still haven't used yet. But we've also added a little bit of draft history, what rounds the Pittsburgh Steelers are drafting in, and how and why they have those picks that they're using in a draft. So if you haven't had a chance, go over to steelcityunderground.com and sign up for your free guide. I'm sure you'll enjoy it, and I appreciate all of you for listening. Make sure you tune in next time here to the Steel City Underground.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.